Hey everyone, I'm David Bauders. I'm the CEO of Trade Hounds, and I'm here today with Dave Quatela. Dave is the North American Marketing Manager for Siemens. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, thanks Dave for having me. Appreciate it.
Great to spend time with you.
Same here.
We just wanted to talk a little bit today about the demographic challenges in the electrical industry. We all know that there's a lot of demographic change coming. It's estimated that about half of the skilled workforce in the electrical industry will be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And they're being joined by a new generation, Gen Z, and these folks are digital natives, and they have very different expectations when it comes to how they do their work, how they learn, how they socialize, how they engage with brands, how they buy things. I want to talk a little bit about that today. So
certainly.
Tell us a little bit about Siemens and how you're connecting with the very youngest electricians in the industry, about workforce development, some of that.
Yeah. Workforce development is a really big topic, not only in industry, but for Siemens in general, as you mentioned. We know that the workforce is aging, and we need to fill the gap with qualified electricians or qualified construction trade workers, right? I believe the average age of an electrician in the United States is around 55 to 57 years old, depending on what research you're reading. So we know the tide's turning very quickly. And Siemens is doing what it can in order to be front and center of that industry-wide problem. Siemens Educates America is an initiative that we're working towards, working with trade schools, working with industry organizations, both union and non-union, to help reinforce and accentuate the learning models that Gen Z student or apprentice would appreciate. So, back in the old days, me and you, right, came up with textbook, number 2 pencil, overhead projection machine, even PowerPoint to some extent. Now, video, immersive training, XR technologies are taking center stage. So Siemens is really embracing that immersive experiential training as a means to create muscle memory in a safe, controlled environment, so that apprentice can have that confidence going out into the workforce and doing the job right the first time.
We know that this generation is heavily involved in social media. That's where they spend a lot of their time.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about how Siemens is meeting them where they are and building presence, awareness, and preference around social media?
So I have a 13-year-old. He's in 8th grade. Instagram is probably his best friend. That's not human.
That's right.
He's on it constantly. And that's how he's getting his information. That's how he's connecting with his group of friends and sharing of that information. So we need to be where the eyeballs are at the end of the day, right? And we know that maybe the way things used to be isn't the way they should be going forward. And waving that same old flag just isn't going to cut it anymore in today's society and with that particular generation. So social media, influence marketing, it's where we need to be and where we're going in order to capture the minds and the eyeballs of that generation.
So in terms of connecting and selling to this generation, how does Trade Hounds help you as a social marketplace to build awareness, preference, and revenue for the Siemens brand?
Absolutely. Siemens has, and I think a lot of these larger brands tout their own expertise and tout what they can do for industry with either products or their selling model, go-to-market strategies, things of that sort. But when we put ourselves as the hero of the story, it doesn't leave room for the customer, right? And the customer being the Trade Hounds community of, I believe it's 400,000 plus folks that are in, about half of them are electricians. Them creating user-generated content talking about our product just helps tell our story in a way that we could never do ourselves, right? We are a manufacturing company, we make great products, and that's what we want to talk about day in and day out, where your user group or that community that's out there, they want to talk about the why and the how, not necessarily the what. And that's important for us.
And we know that authenticity is so important, and a lot of the Gen Zers out there, they don't want to hear from the company that sells the products. Right. They want to hear from the people using the product. And I think really for Trade Hounds users, what's great is they can share their stories, they can share pictures, they can share video. And all of a sudden, we have a new way for brands to really be front and center with their customers.
I'm a guitar player, right? And I love Fender guitars. But I'm not going to Fender's website to learn about the specs of that particular guitar. I'm watching my favorite guitar player that played the Fender brand and getting inspired by watching that. I think the same rule applies to the construction industry.
It's how we trust the information that we get.
Exactly, yeah.
So we know that this digital native generation not only learns about products differently on social media, but they also expect to be able to buy differently.
Sure.
These are digital natives. They want to be able on their phones to not only learn about, but also to purchase. Talk about how important it is to work in a social marketplace where the learning activity and the buying process are integrated that way.
Yeah, we need to remove the friction points. The customer support folks that you would normally talk to, or order entry folks that you normally talk to, all that can be digitized and automated so that you can free up that technical expert to be on the phone or to be in front of a computer answering those technical questions for that user. The buyer wants to get from soup to nuts and the most efficient way possible, because sometimes they're not doing their ordering or getting their product until maybe late at night, right? After the day is done, they're looking at, okay, what do I need for tomorrow's job, bill of material? Is someone going to be on the other line at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. or 10 p.m.? Probably not, right? So they want to have that clean, efficient process, have their materials ready the next day for a will call pickup, and then if they need a live person, a live body, they can go ahead and make that call or use various applications in order to get that information.
So why don't, a lot of distributors out there who are thinking about social marketplaces, they may be wondering, why don't we just bring them to our website? Can you tell us what's wrong with that thinking in terms of meeting the current generation, the next generation where they are?
I think there's a myriad of reasons. Maybe it's poorly attributed data. Maybe it's pricing models that just doesn't work for that customer. Maybe that customer is just looking for a little bit of a leaner experience or a single source of truth where they can learn about the product, they can order said product, they can check the inventory of a product all within one location. And some supply houses, some do a good job, some not so good job. And I think if we can find a single source of truth, and perhaps Trade Hounds is that is that source of truth, where they can tell their story, they can share other people's stories, and then ultimately buy that said product, and then go to that source for learning and development, for technical questions and expertise. I think that lends itself to a pretty powerful resource.
Yeah, one of the things we learned from surveying the Trade Hounds user base is the typical user buys from 4 to 7 different supply houses.
Yes.
They rarely can source an entire job from a single supplier. It's fairly common, either because of out of stock, because of lead times, because of product availability. There's a whole host of reasons, but because they aren't able to source typically from a single distributor, that means that going to distributor websites requires them to learn 4 to 7 different passwords, login information, navigation pathways, being able to make sense of all of that complexity. And what our users have been telling us is they want a single interface, a single logon that helps them to be able to get that information as close as possible to the point of need in real time. And so I think a lot of distributors now are finally realizing if we're not in the platform where our customers are, we're going to lose share of wallet, and we may be less relevant to this generation.
Yes, agree wholeheartedly. And we see it today with our electrical contractors, both on the residential and the commercial side, that to your point, their share of wallet is going to 4 to 7 different locations. So you need a streamlined approach. You need the same answer every time, regardless of whether you're going to site A, site B, site C. The password thing, I mean, it's a nightmare, right? It's unbelievable. So absolutely, having that single source of truth, a singular platform where, again, it's a community-based platform, which is what I love about Trade Hounds, is that out of your 200,000 electricians that are posting and creating user-generated content, they're building a community within themselves, and they're leaning on each other for FAQs or for technical expertise and whatnot, but they're also able to get that product when they need it, when they want it, know when stock's available, and be able to have it on the site the next day.
One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is the Trade Hounds users are currently spending between $20 and $30 billion per year on material. So you might think this is just a social community, but it's not. We've surveyed them, and we know they're spending a lot of money. They need the material to do their work. When they don't get their material quickly, work stops. They make less money. Their crews are idle. There's a lot of financial consequences to not helping these guys along. One of the new features that Trade Hounds is integrating is a company we acquired called Wrangled. Wrangled is really helping contractors to go through the whole estimating and proposal process.
Sure.
So what we've learned from talking to our users is they waste a huge amount of time once they have a bill of materials to do some work, simply getting availability and pricing from their distributors to be able to then quickly turn that over to their customer.
Yeah.
And so typically in these markets, the first to bid and propose wins the deal.
Of course.
It's not a price-based game most of the time. How do you think about the importance of distributors integrating with this type of a tool so they can help their contractors win more business?
So as we mentioned at the top of the interview about workforce development, and we work in multiple vocational schools, training facilities, union, non-union. For a 4-year apprenticeship, you learn a lot about theory and wiring and all the different products that go into a construction job or electrical job. What you don't learn, in most cases, I'm generalizing, economics 101, right? How to run a business. I would say that every apprentice that goes through an apprenticeship school, for the most part, would like one day to aspire to own their own contracting firm, right? Not everyone, but I'd say a fair amount.
Right.
How can you run a proper business without knowing economics 101, right? Cash flow, margins, profitability, right? Proper inventory management. So having the ability to have that all encompassed in one solution not only helps that channel partner or distributor, but ultimately the contractor at the end of the day to be a profitable and reliable service provider for their community.
So we've really been advocating with distributors the importance of supporting their contractors in critical workflow situations. One of the things that we've seen is with the automation of the estimating to cash cycle with their customers, they can cut out a significant amount of work, typically 20 to 50% of the work steps that are going through this, the amount of time. And today, our users tell us they're spending up to 40% of their time simply getting the information and ordering and procuring the materials they need. So 40% of your time right off the top is not billable.
No,
you've cut your pay by 40%. So we're trying to really shrink that dead time number. And distributors can play a big role in making a difference there.
Certainly.
So thinking about one of the other trends with Gen Z is not only do they want to be their own boss, they're finding new ways to actually be their own boss before they're their own company.
Sure.
And this is really the gig work economy.
Yeah.
I think for these types of people, it's especially important to help them efficiently have the core infrastructure they need to do these business processes, whether it's estimating, proposing, getting paid by their customer. These are things that full-time businesses have to do, but gig workers need to do it too.
They do. I tell anyone who will listen to me, the 3 most important contacts on my phone are my wife, my kid, and my electrician, and maybe my plumber, right?
Don't forget the plumbers.
Don't forget the plumber, and my HVAC guy. But they all work for companies, but they work for themselves as well. The weekend warriors or the gig work, as you mentioned. And when I'm billed by my electrician, because he wanted to change some ceiling fans for me, I pay him via Venmo, right? That's how we do it. That's how we're doing business, or I'm writing him a check. Now, what he does with that in order to keep his books straight, and his accounting straight, whether it's
pay suppliers,
pay supplies, I have no idea, but I'm willing to bet and willing to guess it's probably not as robust as a solution that's all-encompassing.
That's right.
And I really feel for those folks that want to go off on their own, make a few dollars, get some vacation money, put together, put aside, having that source that's going to allow them to bill, purchase, and then also do the auditing at the end of the day is going to be a huge lifesaver for them, quite frankly.
I think what's so exciting to me about the Siemens Trade Hounds partnership is it's really going full cycle.
Yeah.
We're meeting the next generation of students, of apprentices where they are, helping to build them up with new knowledge resources, helping to give crowdsourced advice to how-to questions, troubleshooting questions, helping them to transact digitally, and helping them potentially at the end of this whole thing to even become more financially independent. I think it's a very exciting time.
It's an exciting time, and one of the tools that we're incorporating in that whole ecosystem, if you will, is AI. Right? It's a topic people are probably sick of hearing it by now about artificial intelligence. But what Siemens is doing is we've curated all of our content for our electrical products division, and we've sourced it so that a user, one of your Trade Hound members, can go in and what type of breaker do I need for this panel board? Or help me create a training document for an apprentice if I'm an electrical instructor. So it's a means to help subsidize, some of the knowledge, if you will. Yes, technical experts, yes, they know their trade, they know their craft, but sometimes you can't get a hold of somebody, sometimes you can't get to the website, sometimes maybe even user-generated content's not providing that answer. So we want to use artificial intelligence as a means to take curated, legally and branded approved content and put it in the hands of our user group and your user group as a means just to make them more efficient, make them faster, and make them be more productive in the job site.
I like that last word, productive, because there is a real gap right now. It's hard enough for us to replace the retiring electricians. Sure. Add on that all of the investments in infrastructure, the grid. There's a massive amount of new construction that's going to take place. That's all on top of just replacing what we had. Of course. Something has to give, and we think at the end of the day, productivity is going to have to be a big part of the solution. It is. Anything we can do to digitize, to streamline, to automate, to eliminate wasted time helps us to really close the gap in order to meet the future. Absolutely. And Numa is that tool which we feel is going to be that game changer, that single source of truth that aligns very well with the Trade Hound platform. Well, Dave, I want to thank you for Siemens' commitment to the next generation and also for your partnership with Trade Hounds. We really appreciate it. And Dave, we appreciate you for everything that Trade Hounds does and the partnership with Siemens. Look forward to a bright future together. Thank you. Thank you.